Hello and welcome to the Athletic Soccer Show. We're here to look back at England's 3-0 victory over Senegal in the round of 16. I'm Jack Collins, I'll be your host, and I'm joined once again by the wonderful Mr. Rich Amofa. How you doing, mate?
Hey, yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a wonderful day of talking about football, and it's been a good day for favourites. France obviously won the early game 3-1. Now England have dispatched Senegal relatively comfortably. I'll say we'll talk about the different phases of the game, but I think first and foremost, this felt like a really professional performance from England, Rich. It just felt like, especially in the second half, complete control.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you want. A very professional, a very accomplished display. I mean, bearing in mind, especially after, what was a shaky start, they did well to regroup. And it's like I said earlier in the France game, it's about scoring goals at key times and getting those goals just before half time. I think it really knocked Senegal off their sails, really. And then again, getting the third in the second half. And then from that point, it's just about managing the game. Can you keep the ball? Can you just keep the ball moving? Can you maybe get some more goals? And also, so keeping that clean sheet is key. So it's a really professional performance. A lot of the of course, it's a young side, but boosted by the experience with the likes of Jordan Henderson as well. Just managing the game, getting through it. Hopefully, with no injuries as well. And now it's on to France.
Yeah, I mean, and this is it. And I think, we can talk about the various elements of this game, but England started okay. I thought first 10 minutes knocking the ball around relatively nicely. And then they had, as you said, a bit of a wobble. And it felt like there were a couple of opportunities Senegal to take advantage of. And look, you and I have talked about this a fair few times already in this tournament. If you don't take your chances, especially when you're the underdog, they've come back to bite you. And we've seen this in pretty much every single one of the 4 games we've seen so far, right? We have these favorites and you have underdogs, and there have been opening chances for every underdog before a goal has gone in. And when those chances haven't been taken, these teams have been punished. Senegal missed 2 pretty clear opportunities. One for Ismail Assar, who fired over the bar sort of inexplicably, really, from a couple of yards out. And secondly, Boulidia, who was slipped through by Assar, and a really, really good save from Jordan Pickford was the only thing that stopped that going in. And then it felt like the 2 England goals were an absolute sucker punch, but it was a good period for Senegal.
It really is. But again, when you are on top and when you're creating these chances, you have to take at least one, especially at this level where chances are often few and far between. So, I mean, to get one chance, something you've got to take, but then to get two or even three, guiltless chances, you have to take at least one of them at this level, because if you don't, we know England have enough quality and so much depth as well that they will punish you at some point, and that's exactly what happened. And they'll be kicking themselves because at that time in the game when they were on top and they'll being very, I wouldn't say direct, but able to get in behind England easily, with their pace and really, really good movement. It's a time in the game where you just have to score, because then it makes gives pressure to England. How are you going to come back from this? And then of course England will have to push up and get more goals, and then it leaves Senegal spacing behind to attack and maybe get a second, even a third. So as I say, at that point of the game, you have to take your chances, because it just changes the whole game state, really. And they'll be kicking themselves that they've not come away with at least a goal today.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. And I think then you get this kind of 1-2 blow from England, scored 2 goals in quick succession. They're 2 really, really good goals. But as you say, it's one of those, you go into the halftime break, you're like, hang on, we're 2-0 down. How on earth are we 2-0 down after the half that we've just played out? And you look at those, and that's what England can do, especially in transition. And, I pointed out on Twitter, but actually the kind of pass before the assist on both goals, Kane's movement to drop deep and release Jude Bellingham at the top of the first. And then Bellingham himself swerving, sort of slaloming through the midfield for the second before releasing Phil Foden. It was one of those, you're like, okay, this is how you can be punished by teams who have that quality. And England would have gone into the break being like, well, we've maybe got away with one there, but now this is fully in our hands. We're in command of this, and we can happily sit back and wait for the game to come to us.
Yeah, I suspect that's what Southgate said at half time. And I think you're absolutely right with the 1-2 blow, the 1-2 combo to almost knock Senegal out, really. And as you say, just a bit of quality, isn't it? And, the likes of Kane, his movement and his passing was just phenomenal. And Bellingham, I mean, wow. I mean, what a player, teams would be lining up to get him next summer. I'm sure his price tag has gone up 10, maybe 15 million just from that game alone. It was a fantastic performance, and as you say, key and decisive. And the fact he's deciding games already at this age, I mean, if not through goals, but through surging runs and assists and pre-assists is great to see. And as you say, it proved to be decisive today because those 2 goals just before half time, just say, proved to be the knockout blows for Senegal. And you say Bellingham was at the heart of it, as was Kane. And you say it's that quality that you have at the final third, which always gives England a chance in these games. And moving forward as well, and when the tougher games come up, they'll always be confident that they'll get at least a goal because of the quality and the firepower that they've got up front.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, right? England have conceded 2 goals in this entire tournament. They were both late goals against Iran when the game was pretty much put to bed already. That's a major source of confidence, I would imagine, for this side. Especially when you come into the tournament with question marks over your defensive pairing, over who's going to play. Harry Maguire had plenty of questions from around the world as to how he was going to perform at this tournament. The fact that they've only conceded those 2 goals and they haven't gone behind at any point during this tournament feels like England are growing in confidence every game. And even if there were wobbles tonight, it did feel like it was one of those performances that you go, there's no way that England aren't win. As soon as the first goal went in, you were like, well, England will win from here, aren't they? Because the game state will just suit them, as you say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, if England do go behind, it poses another question for Southgate's side. But the fact that, as you say, they've gone ahead in every game, controlled pretty much every game. Okay, fair enough. Senegal were probably the first, decent opposition that England have faced in terms of like real quality and firepower. To as you say, to come away from that unscathed is would be fantastic, especially as you say when questions are asked of the defense before the tournament. Of course, we all know about our attacking flair and firepower, but there are questions asked of Maguire, questions asked of whether, are we going to be even too defensive and play, 5 at the back with 2 or 3 holding midfielders and things like that. But at the moment, it feels like England have got the right blend, the right balance, and it's looking really good for them at the moment. So, yeah, as you say, all roads lead to France for the next game, and you'd like to think that, as you say, they can stay solid at the back. Tough ask, of course. England will always have a chance of getting a goal at the other end.
Yeah. I mean, we'll come on to the France matchup and kind of how it plays out. But before we do, I think just one of the things we should probably address is there were questions over the starting 11 today, and not all of them, obviously. Some players picked themselves in this England side, but there were question marks, I think, over Jordan Henderson's inclusion and whether that made England a little bit more regressive in the midfield. There were question marks over who was going to play on the wings. He went for Bukayo Saka and Phil Foden. Marcus Rashford obviously played incredibly well in the second half against Wales. He would have been sad to have been dropped for this one. And there's always going to be these things. Obviously, Sterling's absence was enforced by him leaving camp. But when you have those kind of question marks, you need those players to step up. And all 3 of them in particular did today. Obviously, Henderson gets the goal, but also major leadership qualities in the middle of the pitch. And actually, in that more advanced role, I thought he was really impressive today. And Foden gets 2 assists. Saka gets the goal. Everyone's a happy bunny at the end of this. And Southgate feels vindicated over his selections.
100%, and I feel like a lot of people will be deleting drafts or previous tweets on Henderson early in the game because, as you say, there were a lot of question marks over that. And to be fair, early in the game, especially in midfield, I mean, I feel England did struggle to progress play from the back. As you say, maybe Henderson could have done more to create the space for Rice to get the ball from the centre backs or even get the ball himself. But I feel like the likes of him, the likes of Bellingham are better when they're running onto the ball and driving forward. And we saw that with Henderson's goal, we saw that with Bellingham. As you say, he's vindicated with Foden with 2 assists. We all know about his quality. And with Saka as well, I think he started the game slowly, as compared to the high standards that we have for him. But he grew into the game, and as we said earlier, when your chances come, you've got to take them. And it was a lovely finish for him. So, yeah, Southgate will be vindicated, and he can turn around and say, look, I've made these changes. They've all come out well, and whether or not he starts with the same team the next game, it doesn't matter because he'll build that trust. And say if he does make changes, okay, you can say, okay, fair enough. You can see where he's going with this, and he's done well before. Will he do well again? And as you say, all builds well. So, yeah, vindication for Southgate. Team played very well, and it's on to the next game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to come back to Harry Kane because I want to talk about it briefly, but we've got a comment here from Manzi who says, Edouard Mendy has never impressed me, even at club level. It's an interesting one because it feels like Edouard Mendy came into Chelsea at a time where the club was so frustrated with what Kepa had brought to the table, obviously a record signing in goal, etc., etc., etc. And Edouard Mendy came in and did the basics really well. You know, he started claiming crosses, all the things that Chelsea fans were absolutely livid that Kepa Arrizabalaga was not doing. And so there was this kind of sense of goodwill around Edouard Mendy. And I think when you come on for it this season, that confidence has obviously dissipated in new managers coming in and out. And Graham Potter has clearly made Kepa his number one again. There's lots of question marks. He does look like a player lacking confidence at the moment. And there are, you know, I'm not sure he could do much about any of the goals hugely. Maybe you should get a hand to the first one because it does look like it might be right at him, but it's so quick. But then you get to those kind of moments and you go, you know, Kane's shot that gets spilled and is spinning around on the goal line, just a couple of crosses that he comes for and completely misses. It does feel like Mendy's confidence is shot at the moment.
Yeah, it looks like it's rock bottom. And it's a weird one because when you think about, you know, to this time last year, you know, people talking about Mendy as one of the best goalkeepers in the world. And, you know, it was even Mendy himself who was very disappointed to not be, you know, named as one of the top keepers at the FIFA Best Awards, for example. And, you know, I feel a lot of people felt that was justified because of his performances last season. But it's been a really strange 12 months with him, as you say, quite error prone. Not really himself, as you say, whether it's a confidence issue, whether it's a concentration issue. As you say, he's made a lot of mistakes. We saw the same again today. You know, even second goal, okay, fair enough, Kane puts his foot through it, but you know, you're thinking will the top keeper get a hand to it? You don't know. And as you say, you know, he spilled Kane's shot later in the game. And those things, you know, when a goalkeeper is looking a bit shaky, it reverberates, you know, throughout the side. Likewise, when a goalkeeper is confident and assured, he just breathes that confidence throughout the rest of the 11 on the pitch. So, yeah, I mean, you like to think he'll do some soul searching and come back. You know, obviously he's going to go home now. From a Chelsea perspective, you like to think he'll come back, you know, rejuvenated and starting again. But I think the question's absolutely right. You know, he's made a few errors this season, something that he needs to really knuckle down and improve because we've already seen him been dropped for Kepa already this season. And if it continues, he'll find himself out the side.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You mentioned it there, the Harry Kane goal. Big goal for Harry Kane. In the Euros, he didn't score in the groups and got to the knockouts and started firing for England. That's massive. And much as we talk about his all-round game, and I think generally it was between him and Bellingham as the best player on the park tonight, generally. But Kane does so many different things well that sometimes it's easy to overlook when he's not scoring goals. But it will give him, you know, a boost. And England need goals to come from everywhere if they're going to overcome France. And then it's probably going to be one of Spain or Portugal if they do overcome France. And then it's probably one of Brazil or Argentina if they get to the final. It's not you know, it's really not an easy path. There are no easy paths. You know, in this World Cup, the brackets are relatively fairly stacked. I think that it's quite even on both sides. So England are going to need those goals to come from a variety of places, and Harry Kane will be delighted to be off the mark for this tournament.
100%. You know, of course, everything that he brings is fantastic. You know, his hold-up play, his creativity, his passing, his movement to take defenders away. Obviously, you know, he comes short, and you know the pacey wide men go beyond him. But it's always good to see your number 9 getting a score sheet. And as you say, for goals to come all over the pitch, it just adds another dimension, something for defenders and other defenses to think about. And like we know, when Kane gets those chances, he is going to bury them. It's something that's not really come at this tournament yet because he's been, you know, more on the creative side. But at least say when the ball's in the box or when the ball's given to him in and around 18-yard box, it's only going to be one outcome really. And as you say, showed that today, put his foot through it, and there's a fantastic finish. And you say that'll breed confidence for the rest of the tournament for him as well.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, let's come on to France because the questions are going to start coming thick and fast now. France, England. We talked yesterday on the show about the fact that Argentina, Netherlands feels like one of those games at a World Cup. You're like, yeah, that's a classic World Cup matchup. This feels like one too. France, England in the quarterfinals feels about right, I think, in where these two teams are coming into this tournament. And so when you're looking at this and going, right, how do England get the better of France? We've obviously seen France win earlier on 3-1, look relatively comfortable. They had their wobbles as well, but I think overall over these two games, what we've seen is two favourites come through, control, and generally do what they need to do without necessarily being unbelievable in either game. So it comes to this question: how do England approach this France game? And there will be question marks over whether they go back to a 5 at the back, whether they remain with a 3 in midfield, how this looks, because Southgate has question marks over all the elements of this team in terms of how you shut down this France attack that we waxed lyrical about earlier on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see England stay for 4, but I can see England move into a 5 at the back just to have the added protection, against France's wingers. Obviously, Mbappe is devastating. And as we said earlier, though, he was only in really second, maybe third gear, and he was still devastating. So, to have, Walker and maybe another right wing back in front of him just for the added protection, I can see that happening. Although, as I say, I would like to see England start over 4 and continue in the same vein of form, really, because going forward, I think it's going to be our best mode of defense, really. If we try and sit back and contain, I don't really feel that's the best route for England. I feel if England can try and push forward and kind of play in a front foot and get at France, that's the best way that England are going to get anything from the game. And we saw in the game earlier, France were susceptible to, mishaps, especially, at their fullback area. We spoke about Koundé, we spoke about, Hernandez, and them being able to be got at, and you say that's where Poland created their best chances. And we know England have an abundance of talent in the wide areas, so if we can get our wide players on the ball nice and early, high and wide, and running at those fullbacks, then I think we'll really have some joy there. So I think that attack is the best form of defense. I feel if we try and sit back, I think France will just pick England off sooner rather than later. So as you say, it's better to just be in the front foot, maybe even start with the same team that England started with today, and just press forward and go for it, really. I think you don't want to leave anything out there, do you? So I think if you try and sit back and try and play in the counter, I think France will just pick England off. So it's better to be in the front foot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Rich, you're an England fan, and you're coming at this from kind of that perspective as much as an analytical one. I kind of want to know what your confidence levels are like, because that's kind of where I'm at with this. I think England have been really, really impressive in this tournament for most of it. I didn't think they were great against the US, but ultimately that game now looks like maybe part of a longer plan, and they were trying to just experiment with different things. And also the US were excellent that day, so you can take away different elements from all these games. But England just feel calm, composed, and in control at the moment. And there's not necessarily the furore that has surrounded England with previous tournaments. And yet, Southgate's record when he's come up against genuinely quality opposition in these knockout stages hasn't been great, even if his knockout record per se is actually very good.
No, it's a good point, as you say, especially compared to previous England managers who, done well in knockout stages. He likes how he likes to play, which is, especially in these big games, quite defensive and sitting deep and trying to hit teams in the counter. But we've seen in the last 2 tournaments when England have done that against the so-called big boys, it's not proved to be fruitful. In the final last year, England took the lead and then just sat back for the rest of the game, and as you say, Italy just kind of probed and eventually got their goal and controlled that game, really. And you'd like to see England just playing a front foot on this occasion. Okay, as you say, they've done well, okay so far. She's not faced anyone yet of the caliber of France, but, they've got their joy playing on the front foot. And I just think, England have not succeeded in these games being defensive or trying to contain. So you're better off just going for it. And as you say, you win the game 2-0 or you lose the game 2-0. I think supporters will just be happy seeing a side that just goes for it, plays in the front foot, presses high, and does all the things that which we've seen them do already in this tournament.
Yeah, fair enough. I wanted you to see where you were with it, but I think that's a reasonable place to be. If you don't leave any regrets out there, I suppose is probably the message in that regard. Don't come back and be like, oh, maybe if we'd had a go, it would have been a different story.
Yeah, exactly. I think you just have to learn from the past, really. Of course, obviously, France are going to be, obviously they've got an abundance of talent, but so do England. So why not use the talent and, the pace and the threats that England have as well? Sometimes we can give too much respect to certain opposition, and of course, France deserve it. But, there's no reason why England can't play in the front foot and get a good result. I mean, listen, obviously today England did concede quite a few chances, and maybe you're looking at it and thinking, if Senegal had their full strength side, compared to the side that won AFCON, they were missing 5 players from that side, like some Mane, Kayate, just to name a few. So maybe if they had their full strength sides, England would have been punished, but you say they got through it, and as you say, they played in the front foot, got the job done. So you'd like to see much the same, really. You say just learning from previous mistakes, really. I feel like, as you say, last year in the final, after going ahead, it was so defensive, and it was just a matter of time before Italy would score. So you want to kind of, okay, if England do lose the game, you at least want to go out with your head held high and say you gave it your all, and not, as you say, not leave anything on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, with that, Rich, we're going to probably call it a day here on the Athletic Soccer Show. All that's left for me to do is say thank you to everybody for tuning in as ever. And thank you so much to Mr. Rich Amofa for joining me on both games today. It's been a real pleasure, Rich.
No, thanks, Shaka. No, it's been real good fun. 2 good games. 2 favourites have gone through, and looking forward to next week.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing what goes on tomorrow, and if that favourites streak continues in the games, or the round of 16 games tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've been Jack Collins. This has been the Athletic Soccer Show, and we'll see you tomorrow.